synchronized our watches. Zelensky and European leaders tried to talk some sense into Trump before his meeting with Putin. Did they succeed? Alaska will show. A rehearsal for nuclear war. Putin once again ordered Lukashenko to shake the hazel tree. Let's just hope Alina doesn't get blown apart. The air defense at Kabaeva's residence could make Moscow and St. Petersburg jealous. All this and more coming up in the broadcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel Ukraine Today and give us a like if you enjoy our work. So the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, along with leaders of several European countries, the EU and NATO, held a video conference on Wednesday with US President Donald Trump and US Vice President J.D. Vance. Commenting on the outcome of the talks, Zelensky stated that Trump agrees Ukraine should receive firm security guarantees. Zelensky also voiced several other important points. The position regarding the withdrawal of the armed forces of Ukraine from Donbas remains unchanged. Ukraine will not leave Donbas in exchange for a ceasefire. This is the final decision after discussions with European leaders. Any issues concerning territorial integrity cannot be discussed without the will of our people and in violation of the Constitution of Ukraine. We discussed the situation on the front line with Trump. I said that Putin is bluffing, Zelensky said. And here is Trump's statement after his conversation with Zelensky and European leaders. I would rate the conversation a 10, very friendly. There is a very high probability that we will have a second meeting. If the meeting with Putin in Alaska goes well, I would like to hold a second meeting almost immediately between Putin, Zelensky, and myself, if they want me to be there. If I don't get the answers I need, there won't be a second meeting, Trump said, referring to the Russian Federation. A worrying signal. Trump fired all the Russia specialists who surrounded him ahead of the meeting with Putin. Quite a strange decision, wouldn't you agree? All the details are in our report.
A week ago, the upcoming meeting between Trump and Putin was called Key to Ending the War. And today, the White House press secretary is at a promotional event with listening exercises for Trump.
I think this is a kind of listening exercise for the president. Only one party involved in this war will be present. And the president will have to go and once again gain a clear understanding of how to end this war.
The president of Ukraine also described the upcoming meeting in reserved terms. The leaders can talk about their own interests, but not about the fate of Ukraine.
The conversation between the President of the United States and Putin could be important for the development of their bilateral track, but they can't do anything about Ukraine without us. I really hope that the US President understands and realizes this.
For several days now, the press has been spreading news about an alleged exchange of territories and the withdrawal of Ukrainian troops from the Donetsk region. President Zelensky categorically denied these rumors.
We will not withdraw, we cannot do that. If today we withdraw from Donbas, from our fortifications, from our positions, from the heights we control, we will clearly open up a foothold for the Russians to prepare an offensive. In a few years, Putin will have a clear path not only to the Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk regions, but also to Kharkiv. And that is why, in my opinion, any question of territory cannot be separated from security guarantees.
But the White House reminded everyone. Putin literally begged for a meeting with Trump, and Trump condescendingly agreed to listen to him.
This meeting will take place because the president of Russia requested a meeting with the US president through his special representative, Steve Witkoff, who, as you know, traveled to Russia to meet with Putin at his request. And that is why President Trump agreed to this meeting at Putin's request. The purpose of this meeting is to understand how best to put an end to the war.
The Russian Ministry of Defense has preemptively accused Ukraine of preparing provocations to disrupt the negotiations. Allegedly, a strike is being prepared on a densely populated area and the killing of dozens of Ukrainian civilians.
Whenever the Russian Federation planned any actions, it would talk about provocations. It has always been this way. And then they would do exactly what they had described as a provocation, as if it were a provocation. In reality, it was them doing it. If something goes wrong in the negotiation process, they will try to blame Ukraine for it.
The United States is also clearly wary of something. Before the meeting in Alaska, Trump moved bombers to Norway, as close as possible to the Russian border.
Take the 2 submarines, for example. It at least looked like strengthening the negotiating position before meeting with Putin. Absolutely. Just like the deployment of nuclear weapons in Britain, right? But this kind of nuclear escalation in rhetoric from both sides is supposed to ultimately bring them to some sort of balance at its peak. What about the 3 planes? Well, honestly, to the Netherlands, I don't know.
The meeting between Putin and Trump will have to be held at a military base in Anchorage because it's the height of the tourist season in Alaska. Although the White House had hoped to avoid publicly receiving the Russian dictator at a classified facility.
Many locations were discussed, but of course, Alaska is a state within the United States. So the president is very flattered and looks forward to the opportunity to welcome President Putin on American soil.
And when Putin comes and has to humble himself on what used to be Russian territory, fully aware that this is and will remain US territory, well, that's definitely a politically awkward situation for Putin, very much so. Does this affect the security of the United States? That there will be Russians there, yes, delegations, FSB agents, and all the rest? I don't think so. Why? Because
Well, let's say anything sensitive for intelligence purposes, like samples of equipment, I think will be removed from that base in advance. That's not a problem.
Hungarian Prime Minister Orbán saw an opportunity to promote himself at the upcoming meeting and started talking about things no one had asked him about.
We're talking now as if this is a military situation with an open ending. But that's not the case. The Ukrainians have lost the war. Russia has won this war. The only question is when and under what circumstances the Western countries backing Ukraine will acknowledge that this has happened and what follows from that.
Because this is part of his political propaganda, which is currently relevant to his own political process. He could lose power right now. And if he loses power, he also loses essentially his own physical safety. Yes, the central line is anti-Ukrainian and anti-European rhetoric.
Orbán tried to humiliate not only Ukraine but also his European colleagues. It's unclear what result he's aiming for, but it's obvious that such statements only make things worse for Hungary itself.
The Russian-Ukrainian war is a European issue. And you Europeans are incapable of solving it. When two strong men, the American and Russian presidents, sit down at the negotiating table and you shout from afar afterwards, you look pathetic and weak.
It's not just Europeans who want to dictate the terms of peace. China has also stated that all interested parties should participate in negotiations on Ukraine. It is obvious that under these circumstances, Trump and Putin alone will not be able to make any final decisions.
In Belarus, it was announced that during joint exercises with the Russian Federation, they will develop a plan for the use of nuclear weapons and the Oreshnik system. This once again proves that Putin wants to wage war for life. The Russian Federation plans to produce nearly 80,000 strike drones in 2025. They are also hoping for continued assistance from North Korea. Putin and Kim Jong-un, during a phone conversation, reaffirmed their unity in the war against Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian armed forces are methodically doing their job. Drones attacked Russia's Bryansk region. An oil pumping station is on fire. All the details are in our report.
The United States has recently deployed 3 formidable B-1B Lancer supersonic bombers to Norway for important joint exercises with its European allies and partners.
Trump is demonstrating the seriousness of his intentions regarding ending the war in Ukraine. I should note that prior to this, the United States relocated its nuclear arsenal to the territory of the United Kingdom. And according to Trump's statements, the nuclear submarine fleet was sent to the shores of the Russian Federation.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky reported that during a recent video conference with US President Donald Trump, Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and a number of European leaders, Witkoff signaled a possible readiness on Russia's part for a ceasefire.
On the eve of the meeting between the Russian dictator and the American president, the Russian side voiced a new proposal from the occupying country regarding the possible withdrawal of Russian troops from the territories of Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions. All of this is happening under pressure from the United States, primarily economic pressure. This includes the blocking of the shadow fleet at the moment when Panama and the Bahamas refuse to provide their flags to the shadow fleet of the Russian Federation. It also includes the increase in oil production, which against this backdrop has led to a $2 drop in the price per barrel. And accordingly, this is also the unprecedented pressure from the United States during the so-called arms race.
While telling fairy tales about peace, Putin, before meeting with Trump, calls Kim Jong-un to reaffirm his alliance in the war against Ukraine.
In this way, Putin is trying to make diplomatic gestures to suggest that the Russian Federation supposedly has military political allies, and accordingly, that decisions regarding the nature of the war, and moreover, its cessation will be made collectively. This is nothing more than an attempt by the Russian Federation to put on a brave face in a losing situation.
Russia plans to produce nearly 80,000 strike drones in 2025. This was stated by Deputy Head of the Main Intelligence Directorate Vadim Skibitsky. We're talking about Geran 2, Harpy 1 drones, and decoys like the Gerbera. According to Skibitsky, Ukraine's task is to disrupt these plans and destroy the production facilities.
At the moment, according to the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, the daily production of drones on the territory of the Russian Federation is about 190 to 200 units. Accordingly, the statement about producing 80,000 drones per year, I emphasize, means an increase in the production of Geran 2 and Geran 3 type UAVs by 20 units per day, bringing the total to about 220 per day. And it should be noted that, taking into account the increased production of UAVs, the monthly capabilities of the Russian occupation army amount to 6,600. At the moment, in the month of July, the Russians launched about 6,300 drones over Ukrainian territory. So, on the contrary, this is evidence of stagnation in the Russian military-industrial complex.
Meanwhile, while the Russians are making plans, the Ukrainians are striking at Russia's military facilities. On Thursday, August 7th, the main intelligence directorate announced the destruction of several Russian radar systems in Crimea. One of the targets hit was the latest development of the Russian military-industrial complex, the Yenisei, which currently exists in only a few units. It was restless in Bryansk on the night of August 13th. After a drone attack, the LPDS Unichav oil pumping station in the village of Vysokoye caught fire there. It is noted that this is the largest hub of the Druzhba main oil pipeline network. It is also reported that during the night, drones attacked two more oil refineries in Russia, the Volgograd oil refinery and a facility in Slavyansk on Kuban, Krasnodar Krai. Analysts report that Russian troops have entered the villages of Kucheryavy Yar and Zolotoy Kolodes north of Pokrovsk. This breakthrough allegedly poses a threat of Russian forces advancing toward Dobropilya, Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, which endangers the entire Donetsk region.
The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine is controlling the situation, as evidenced by the redeployment of Azov units to the Pokrovsk direction, and accordingly, the implementation of counter-sabotage measures to eliminate enemy reconnaissance and sabotage groups that have broken through into the operational rear of Ukraine's defense forces. Moreover, I would like to point out that the information from Western media, particularly from the so-called military correspondent Yulian Repka, about an advance 18 kilometers deep into Ukrainian territory is outright disinformation. This is easy to verify. Accordingly, I am measuring the distance from the line of contact to directly to the administrative border with the Dnipropetrovsk region.
The Ukrainian Defense Forces have cleared the outskirts of Stepnohursk in the Zaporizhzhia region of enemy sabotage and reconnaissance groups. The enemy tried to infiltrate and concentrate in the urban area in small groups, but was detected in time and mercilessly destroyed, according to Ukrainian defenders.
Ukraine is attacking enterprises of the Russian military-industrial complex and is doing so with unprecedented intensity and effectiveness. Just over the past few nights, friendly drones have paid visits to unique factories that produce components vital for weapons manufacturing. These include helium for rockets, lenses, and military electronics. Why is this happening now, and what is the aggressor country collectively losing as a result of Ukrainian drone attacks? That's
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
what we'll talk about next. Don't be afraid.
What is this? What is it?
Huh? It's nothing to worry about.
Are they flying? Where? Where are they flying to?
Fires at factories and closed airports? That's how August began in Russia. You! Intensity and effectiveness. Every single day, Ukrainian armed forces consistently strike significant Russian military targets or crucial defense industry enterprises and regularly report successful and impactful attacks on unique and vital defense plants located within Russia. These attacks have exposed problems within the Russian Federation's military-industrial complex and caused panic among Russians.
I'm about to explode, you idiot, my health. What should I do? Are your fingers injured? Oh my god. Natasha, get out of here.
Thanks to the Ukrainian Defense Forces, the only Russian plant producing helium for rockets in Orenburg was hit. Local residents reported a series of explosions. The M5 highway was blocked. The Orenburg helium plant processes up to 15 billion cubic meters of gas per year and produces helium, which is critically important for rocket engineering as well as the space and aviation industries. Helium plays a key role in rocket launches. This plant is a vital facility for the Russian military-industrial complex, which is directly involved in the aggression against Ukraine. In Yaroslavl, a major fire mysteriously broke out in the building of a paint and coatings company that produces materials for Russia's military-industrial complex. Another strategically important enterprise was attacked in Tatarstan. The distance from the state border with Ukraine is more than 1,000 kilometers. UAVs reached the workshops in Yelabuga. Here, on the territory of Alabuga, is the headquarters of the company that manufactures combat drones. In 22-24, the plant significantly expanded the production of Iranian-designed strike and reconnaissance drones, using Chinese components and recruiting Russian teenagers to work. The Defense Forces gave Stavropol's Monocrystal an explosive night. Monocrystal specializes in the chemical industry, producing synthetic sapphire for optoelectronics, which is used in military equipment.
It's going. We hit it, yes, we hit it. We hit the oil depot. Here's our strike. Glory to Russia! That's it.
Monocrystal also produces silicon carbide, which is used in armor protection, radars, and military electronics. Monocrystal fulfills state defense orders for the Russian Federation. Eyewitnesses recorded smoke on the factory grounds. The official authorities confirmed the drone threat, but did not provide information about damage to the plant.
It's flying, it's flying. The system is actively engaged in firing, demonstrating a powerful and precise operation that indicates full functionality.
In Arzamas, Ukrainian drones attacked the instrument-making plant.
One of the leading enterprises of the country's defense industrial complex with a 60-year history. The plant produces devices for the aviation, missile, and space industries.
The Arzamas plant produces gyroscopic instruments, control systems, onboard computers, as well as key components for the Kh-32 and Kh-101 cruise missiles. In 2020, the plant was awarded the National Golden Idea Prize in the field of military technical cooperation. The plant is under sanctions from the US and the European Union. Before the successful attack, a note appeared on the Vysota resource, which is dedicated to news about the military-industrial complex, stating that the plant had acquired new equipment. Now, the press service of the Arzamas instrument building plant is sending out letters in public forums demanding that people not write about the attack, even threatening consequences. Russian defense industry enterprises working for the war against Ukraine are absolutely legitimate military targets. Successful attacks by Ukrainian forces help to reduce the military capabilities of the aggressor country's army. The work to demilitarize facilities that produce weapons for terrorizing peaceful Ukrainian cities continues and is becoming increasingly intense.
The internet collapse in Russia has already led to serious problems in the financial sector. Due to widespread outages, the population and businesses are hastily withdrawing cash from banks. In just a few days, 400 billion rubles were withdrawn and stashed under pillows. We will talk about the ongoing internet experiments by the Russian authorities and their consequences in our next segment. While watching, don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel Ukraine Today.
Russians are beginning to withdraw their savings from banks en masse. In just the 2 months of June and July, the outflow of cash amounted to 200 billion rubles per month. These are the official figures from the central bank, and the regulator even admits the reason for the withdrawal of money is the internet shutdown.
This demand is slightly higher than in previous years. The deviation may be related, among other things, to the desire of the population and businesses to create a cash reserve for transactions amid news about new legislative measures regarding payment monitoring, as well as the temporary internet shutdowns in certain regions.
But the central bank was not entirely truthful about the temporary shutdown. Shutdowns in Russia have already become widespread and prolonged. Since May, the internet has been shut down at least 2,830 times, with more than 2,000 of those in July.
Many businesses operate thanks to people having internet access. And it's not just financial services. That's probably the main example, but it's also, for instance, let's take taxi services as an example. Taxis operate primarily because there is a robust internet infrastructure, enabling people to conveniently use the internet to precisely set their desired pickup and drop-off addresses. Furthermore, the entire service, from booking to payment, is seamlessly ordered and managed online, making it incredibly accessible and efficient for users. In other words, taxi services run on internet-based platforms. Naturally, financial services as well. Many money transfers are made possible thanks to internet access.
As a result, Russians don't want to be left without money when the internet is shut off. People started withdrawing funds from banks, but to be fair, 400 billion rubles over 2 months is not a huge loss for the banks.
What mattered here was the trend. In other words, if this is just a short-term phenomenon, then let's say it doesn't really mean much. But if this is a significant trend that truly continues to grow, if it starts at a mere 400 and then could potentially reach up to an astonishing 4 trillion or even 5 trillion, which would already represent at least 10% of the entire global economic situation, then let's just say it would undoubtedly be an extremely unpleasant and truly catastrophic scenario.
And it seems that the trend will indeed continue to grow. There are no plans to stop shutting off mobile internet in Russia. Moreover, the restrictions are getting even stricter. If previously we were talking about shutdowns lasting several hours or even a few days, now we're talking about weeks without internet, and in one region, even months. We're talking about the Nizhny Novgorod region. In some districts of this region, there has been no mobile internet for more than 2 months already. There are also problems with regular phone service.
The most significant mobile network outages affected residents of Dzerzhinsk and neighboring settlements. Svetlana, a source for Meduza, says that at the end of June and the beginning of July, when the mobile shutdowns had just started, cell phones in her neighborhood also stopped working. People couldn't call an ambulance, couldn't contact utility services. My neighbor had a burst pipe that leaked down several floors, but she couldn't call emergency repair services.
At first, the local authorities stayed silent about the shutdown, but after a month of isolation, they acknowledged the situation in some cities. Yes, it's not easy, and it really complicates our work, wrote the local governor, Gleb Nikitin. Mobile internet never came back. The situation is made worse by the fact that many Russians simply didn't have wired internet at home. While mobile internet was available, there was no need for it, and now providers just can't keep up with the demand.
A friend of mine was told, "Don't expect to be connected anytime soon, you'll have to manage on your own for now," says Anna, a resident of Viksa. As Meduza found out, the home internet provider in Viksa cites a shortage of staff. They suggest leaving a request for connection and waiting for a call no earlier than the end of September.
The situation in the Nizhny Novgorod region is already being called a kind of experiment, and people are being urged to pay attention to how the locals are living. After all, their experience may prove useful to many, and considering the latest statistics on shutdowns, the internet is being cut off more and more often and for longer periods. Which means that Russians really should prepare for the fact that the internet will be more dead than alive.